It is a political mistake to weaponize anti-corruption. So this is now an elite civil war. He is now sort of personalizing. It is him, not the institutions. It's Uhuru. This is the star of the show. Corruption is in people. So fighting individuals, you haven't vanquished corruption because more corrupt people are being born.
Just a very quick analysis of what's happening in terms of the fight of corruption, given the kind of problems that we've laid out in this conversation. What Uhuru Kenyatta is doing today in terms of demolishing buildings and standing behind the reclaiming of our riparian land, DPP, who is quite zealous in looking for people who are corrupt, genuine? Is it, there was someone who put it this way, is it a response to complacency of the past, complicity of the past, or is it an actual sense of conviction that something can actually happen?
I read it as political survival. It's the sort of things that I have just been described, that you are feeling the pressure and you do not have structural solutions to the things. You are conflicted. So you cannot make the difficult decisions. So you do the things which create a lot of illusion of motion without real movement. Because Uhuru and Raila, in their handshake, promised us that they were going to deal with the fundamental political problems of injustice that have plagued this country since 1963. And they said that, in fact, they took responsibility for mistakes of the past, and they said, in fact, our fathers, founding fathers, and I think here they even meant their biological fathers, made some mistakes, and we have all these ethnic and family feuds and all sorts of things, and this thing is going to end with us. It's a very bold statement. I asked at the time, is Uhuru Kenyatta in particular, who bears a lot of the baggage, who carries a lot of this baggage of these injustices from the past, is he prepared, psychologically prepared to go through this? And, nobody could answer that question, and so I was emphatic. Is he, for instance, prepared to sit with the people of Taita and discuss land justice, knowing the sort of disproportionate ownership of land by his family there and other things? And I think that's when it registered that I was asking very fundamental questions. And I think that was, to me, what the spirit of the handshake suggested. And if that was what it was about, what you then expected was a very bold political initiative. That they would go out, and that political initiative would entail a political roadmap of how we are going to move from the electoral crisis of 2017 to probably a free and fair election in 2022 or whenever, and probably, in my preference and our proposal, a transitional government that is going to implement whatever reforms that are required, and also referee the election, and perhaps that Uhuru and Raila would midwife this process between them, referee that transition as non-participating parties, and then ride into the sunset. So that they would then have created the political space to be able to actually confront some of these things now, like tribalism and corruption and electoral failure, in a more sort of nationalistic and create a sort of conciliatory environment to be able to do this. Because this is a place where we can say all of us have sinned. They are all very conflicted because they are all culpable in many of these things. Then what you see is Uhuru trying to be a hero by going on a war path. So when he goes on a war path, this is not the way you create reconciliation and national unity and create an environment for this kind of dialogue. You are just muddying the waters with something which I think, sort of a blood sort of bath, because people are baying for blood. But by so doing, he's part of this political class. They are all corrupt. Okay? So what I would have expected is to stay away from that so that they can focus on the reforms that will strengthen the institutions, so that in future we don't have this kind of impunity. But when you now say it's a war, you are prosecuting, you're saying a war is fought. So you have created enemies.
Yeah, but the enemies perceived are in your court.
Exactly. So this is now an elite civil war. So you're going to have a civil war among our political elite. So while our elite are having a political civil war,
where are we?
Where are we? So, and that has been my position on this from the outset. I said it is a political mistake to weaponize corruption, anti-corruption, because it becomes cynical. Because especially when you're dealing with people who are conflicted, because then, unless they are prepared to commit suicide, what it means, as soon as they say, people can see that they are going for this one, but this one is untouchable, then what happens? You have people become cynical. So, is it genuine? I don't know. But what I can say, it is ill-advised.
The only way out, in your view, is if Uhuru says, here I am sacrificing everything to be able to ensure that this fight, this war that I've started, comes to an end. As in that I vanquish corruption. And if it takes me down as well, that's the solution that you're saying.
It doesn't solve anything. Because I don't know any society which is not corrupt. Corruption is in people. So fighting individuals, you haven't vanquished corruption, because more corrupt people are being born and growing up.
And they're building more corrupt system.
And they're building more corrupt system. Fundamentally, it's a failure of governance institutions. Okay? So what you want is, and we do have the templates for these governance institutions. Why are they not working? They are working because they are not allowed to. Why are they not allowed to? Who is the culprit of interfering with EACC over the last 4 years? Uhuru Kenyatta. Who was protecting the NYS sort of suspects in their first term? Uhuru Kenyatta. Okay? So for him to turn around and start protecting a war against individuals, I think is a bad political strategy.
I mean, the counter to that is that Uhuru would say that he made the statements, he had the intent, but he's a president beholden to a constitution, and he cannot interfere in these institutions. So it's not him per se, it's the people who are there.
A few years ago, he stood there at a meeting I was supposed to go to. I invited, I refused to go, and he said, "Mnataka nifanye nini?" Now we hear that he's giving DPP orders and all sorts of people order. What has changed?
Nothing.
Exactly. Okay? So he said he could not interfere with institutions now, then, but now it serves his political interests, whatever he thinks they are, and he can give those people orders. And they are taking orders which they shouldn't, at any rate. So this, even what they are doing is a manifestation of the dysfunction of the governance system, because it's now personal rule. He is now sort of personalizing. It is him, not the institutions. It's Uhuru. This is the star of the show.
Will he get out of this show alive?
That's the good question. I say, is that in our interest? So is that what we should be doing? I said, I have said this in the past, that the most egregious form of corruption is to subvert an election. He's the beneficiary of the subversion of an election. Now he's going around at little people who are corrupted the city council and were given licenses to and then they sort of violated riparian land. But he's the beneficiary of the most egregious form of corruption. And nothing is that's what I'm saying. They've run out of ideas. Even the one good idea which they had in the handshake, they have not been able to follow through with. They've sort of gone off on sideshows. What by now, if they really had not just serious, but they actually had the intent and the capacity to do this thing, and by now, those political reforms that we need to do and institutional reforms and whatever should have been agreed on. That political roadmap, we should have it, and people should know where we are headed. Now we don't know where we are headed. What we are hearing is, wait, you will see. So a national process, we said, and we were very clear as NASA when we were sort of prosecuting our sort of campaign against the electoral injustice, that we will not go into a boardroom deal with Jubilee.
But that's exactly what happened.
No, it was. What we now have is a barroom deal between two individuals.